Stephon Gilmore recently spoke about his status as an NFL free agent, and he has us thinking, could there be a Cowboys reunion with the All-Pro former Defensive Player of the Year? Let's break it down. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with you guys in between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday with quick-hitting videos such as this one. Stephon Gilmore made his way into some headlines starting yesterday, but it's a discussion that has carried on until Wednesday, and that is because he's still out there. Stephon Gilmore is still out there, and I understand he's not at his prime. I understand you're not signing him with the intention of having him be a Defensive Player of the Year type player, an All-Pro type player even, but this guy is a starter in the NFL, and I think everyone who watched the 2023 season would agree with that. You're talking about the guy that the Cowboys went to when their first team All-Pro from the 2023 season, DaRon Bland, was struggling versus DK Metcalf. And I'm talking about that Seattle Seahawks game. He was being dunked on by DK Metcalf, by Geno Smith, who was on fire on that game. You got to give it to him. The Cowboys, who under Dan Quinn, never really did the whole shadowing thing with their corners. They had Stephon Gilmore shadowing DK Metcalf as their second half adjustment. Worked out perfectly. And Gilmore only ended up being, roasted a little bit in the playoffs because he also was dealing with that shoulder injury. In fact, it is a theory that Barry Church even shared moments after the game that the Cowboys shifted to playing a lot of zone coverage because Stephon Gilmore was banged up. In one of the best pass defenses in the NFL, Stephon Gilmore was one of the most important aspects, one of the most important players. So it's kind of crazy that he's still out there available in free agency. Now, let's break down why that is. And I think that the biggest reason is that it's also a little bit of Gilmore's decision, right? Usually, these big-name veterans will wait for several reasons, and I think there's two big ones. Number one, honestly, I think they want to rest in the spring. Not really rest in the sense that I'm just going to be lazy and I'm not going to be physically ready for an NFL training camp, but they know they got to take care of their bodies. This is actually something that Stephon Gilmore talks a lot about. If you listen to interviews that he's been on, I remember the time that he was on with Cam Newton on his podcast on YouTube, and Gilmore broke down that, hey, to play at this level in the NFL for this long, you got to be able to take care of your body. So I do think veterans like Stephon Gilmore sometimes like to skip all of the early phases of the offseason. But then there's also the fact that a lot of these NFL teams go into training camp thinking, oh, this second-year corner that I've got, he is going to step up. And the reality is they don't get to see if they have stepped up or not indeed until training camp. OTAs, minicamp, there's no live contact allowed. There's no pads. How are teams supposed to really know what they've got? Honestly, it's a lot of guesswork. So once they get to training camp and they start seeing instead of guessing, then it's a different conversation. And then it's like, oh boy, he's not what I thought he was, and I need a corner, right? And then suddenly that gives some leverage back to the players like Stephon Gilmore, who have reached a point in their careers where you don't got to find out. Like, Stephon Gilmore is what it is. There might be some question marks about whether or not he still got it, but he's been able to do it before in the NFL. And then, unfortunately, injuries happen as well in the NFL. So there are several reasons why an NFL veteran like Gilmore would rather just wait to see if a better opportunity comes up, whether that's financially or contender-wise, right? Because there are players that are just focused on getting the biggest bag that they can get, and there are players that are hoping to land with a team that gives them a chance at, forget about winning that Super Bowl ring, at being in the playoffs, right? Because being on a 2-14 team, 2-15 team does not sound fun at all. And for a player that is financially okay, I do think that plays a role into this whole thing. Anyways, this is all just a prelude to get into what Stephon Gilmore actually said recently, and this happened via CBS NFL insider Josina Anderson, who took to Twitter with a long quote given directly to her from Stephon Gilmore. And more or less how it went, not more or less, I'm actually going to read you the exact quote for those of you who are listening on the podcast and stuff. There are still some good corners and safeties out there, like Justin Simmons and myself, that are still not signed. Honestly, I'm still being patient and staying ready until teams see what they have in training camp. But you mean to tell me, among 32 teams, that there are 64 starting corners, and I guess Stephon Gilmore, parentheses, is talking about outside corners, right? You mean to tell me among 32 teams that there are 64 starting corners that are better than me? I don't think that. If teams want to win, I think they should sign the best players. I know I'm still a starter in this league. I started games last year, but the season doesn't start until September. We've got a while. Strong words right there from Gilmore. And I think there are two big things that stick out to me. Number one is that tying into what I just described about the NFL offseason and veterans and being available and all that, it sure sounds like Gilmore is saying, I'm being patient, right? I think that might mean and might not also, but I think it's unlikely that he's not at least received an offer to play in one team or two teams, right? Maybe the numbers are low, maybe the teams are not that good, but somebody in the NFL at least has had to reached out to Stephon Gilmore. Otherwise, these teams don't know what they're doing, right? Somebody has reached out to him. I'm assuming they put out fillers at the very least, if not literal contract offers that maybe Gilmore has not liked, right? And that would be totally fair. But he's talking about being patient, staying ready, and then letting teams see what they've got in training camp. Going to use the Cowboys here as an example right now. Say that the Cowboys... Actually, let me hold on to that for a minute. The other part is 32 teams, 64 starting corners, better than Gilmore. I also would bet against that. I don't think there are 64 corners better than Gilmore, who was consistently ranked among somewhere around the top 20, top 15 in several categories. He was top 15 in PBUs. He was around top 25 in NFL target passer rating, an NFL passer rating allowed when targeted. So he was a very solid starting corner. Was he an all-pro caliber? No, he was not. Was he somebody that you could bank on being a defensive player of the year type guy? No. But is he somebody that would make any team with at least, a solid corner in the lineup feel better about their situation? Hell yeah. That's what Stephon Gilmore would be. And I think there are numbers and film that back it up. I just talked about the Seattle Seahawks game. That's the kind of game film that NFL decision makers have to put up and be like, okay, this guy can still play, even though he's been doing so for a long, long time. Now, let's talk about the Cowboys here in the question of whether or not there could be a reunion between America's team and Gilmore. Here's where I'm at. And this will tie directly into the part of the quote about until teams see what they have in training camp. I think, like Peter King used to write in his Good Morning Football, Monday morning quarterback columns. Then I cannot remember what they were called after he left Sports Illustrated. But anyways, what I think about Gilmore and the Cowboys is that they're not gonna look seriously into him if Trevon Diggs and Daron Bland are healthy. Like, they're not gonna go into this believing that they should pay Gilmore in order to either have a solid backup behind Diggs and Bland on the outside, or believing that they should move Bland back inside to the nickel role that he had before Trevon Diggs went down in 2023. So if Trevon Diggs shows up to training camp and there are no question marks regarding him, I don't think the Cowboys sign Gilmore for depth or to move Bland around again. I think they're just confident in Trevon Diggs. They're confident in Darren Bland more than anything. I think they would just rather not spend somewhere around $8 to $10 million in a player that, they're not exactly in love with, even though he played very solid last year. And they might be thinking, you know what, I've got 2 old pros manning the outside corner slots. I don't need anything else. I don't need to spend $8 million. And this is the team that signed Eric Kendricks, Ezekiel Elliott as their biggest free agency signings this year and didn't spend more than $3 million in either one of those guys, right? So spending $8 to $10 million is actually a pretty big deal for the way the Cowboys have done things in 2024. However, what if they don't like what they see from Trevon Diggs? He got injured in September, which in theory should be enough for Trevon Diggs to be back in form and be ready to go by the time the season starts. But the Cowboys have had some bad luck with these ACL injuries as of late, right? There was Terrence Steele, who didn't play up to his own standards after the ACL injury. He was subpar in pass protection last year. And recently, Michael Gallup as well, after he suffered that ACL injury a couple of years ago, he was not quite the same ever, honestly. So what if the Cowboys get to Oxnard, California, they look at Trevon Diggs and they're like, oh boy, this is not the Trevon Diggs I remember, right? He's a little bit slower, he's a little bit this, that, and this is a guy that thrives in playing press coverage, right? He likes to get up in your face at the line of scrimmage, make contact. He's got to have that speed. He's got to have like that physicality to his game. What if the Cowboys see Trevon Diggs get to training camp and are like not convinced about what they're seeing? Your backups are Nashawn Wright, they're Eric Scott Jr., and I might, I don't want to like leave out any other candidate, but like there's Kellen Carson, there's Josh Butler, there's Garyon Conley. There's not a clear-cut number 4 in this cornerback depth chart. So if that is the case, which would be an unfortunate case, because I think we all want Trevon Diggs to be healthy and ready to go. If that is the case, I could see the Cowboys throwing their hat in the ring and dialing up Stephon Gilmore's phone number. Otherwise, I believe they're going to be comfortable at where they're at. I believe that Gilmore is going to end up somewhere else. But that line about waiting until what other teams do around the NFL and all that, that made me think about Trevon Diggs. Because I think that's, if you're listing the risks that the Cowboys have taken going into the 2024 NFL season, I think banking on Trevon Diggs to be ready to go with little cornerback depth, I think that is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, risk that they've taken on. Maybe not the biggest because of the offensive line risks, but it's one of the top 3. And I actually wrote an article about that for A to Z Sports in case you want to check that out. AtoZSports.com/Dallas. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the show, by the way. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you live tomorrow, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central. Make sure you tune in. Bye-bye.